Welcome to the LBs, the Lovers of Book Author Chat. I'm Laura Beth, and let's just do a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure everybody stays muted during the chat. We're going to have the opportunity to ask questions at the end. You can always put chat questions as we go, and if it pertains to what we're talking about, she'll see it, I'll see it. We'll try to answer that right then and there. But if you want to ask at the end, just raise your hand and we'll get to it. We're also going to take a picture, so please turn your cameras on for that. And I'm excited about sharing that tomorrow. We're also going to record this. So if you miss a part, if you have to go take care of kids or something comes up with dinner's burning, feel free, just know it will be recorded if all technology goes okay. And you'll be able to see that tomorrow or the next day, however long it takes to upload. All right, now to introduce this wonderful novelist. I'm so excited to have Caroline Frost here with us today. And I'm going to read it from the back so I get it right. She has a Master of Professional Writing degree from the University of Southern California and is a licensed marriage and family therapist. Although she currently resides in Pasadena, California with her husband and 3 small children, her roots in Texas run deep as she is a native Texan. Shadows of the Pecan Hollow is her first novel. I can't believe we were just talking about this. Like, I can't believe this is your first novel. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Well, I like to say the time it took me to write this novel, I probably could have written 4 novels in the 10 years it took me. So maybe it is more like my 4th novel.
So tell me about the beginnings then. When did you get started? Tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah. So the first idea that I started playing around with happened in 10 years ago this spring in January of 2012. And I was sort of in a rough place in my relationship with my then boyfriend, now husband. Worked out okay. But yeah, I was going through it. I was mad. I felt super helpless and frustrated. And it was the only time we ever broke up. It was this 2-week period. And I kind of funneled that all into this character that I conceived of, Kit, who was a woman who didn't have to be womanly. She didn't have to be well behaved. She was violent. She was unsociable. And so it sort of started with that raw emotion. And I wrote it as a screenplay, and I wrote the screenplay in 2 weeks. It was very rough, but very sort of just intuitive and fast. And I liked what I had, but I wasn't really interested in sharing it with anyone. It was more for me. And then I workshopped it a little bit with a friend of mine who has written screenplays before, and then I kind of threw it in a drawer. And a few years later, when I was, I think when I was pregnant with my first daughter, my first child, I just thought, I love that character and I love that story. But I don't feel like I did it justice in that short format. A screenplay is 90 pages, and each page takes about a minute to read. It's supposed to sort of simulate the time spent in a movie. And so it was fast. It was very gestural and sketchy. And so I decided to sit down, even though I'd never written a novel before. I decided to just kind of flesh it out for fun, again, not trying to publish it. And it was so much fun. I just loved writing scenes about this character and then all the characters that came after her, Manny, Caleb, Sugar Faye, and Charlie, of course. And so it was just my pure pleasure at doing it that got me into writing it as a novel. And then once I had gotten 250 pages or something into it, I just thought, well, dang, I've spent long enough working on this. I think this was 2018, late 17, 18. I was like, I should maybe try to get an agent and see if I can sell it, finish this thing. So then by then I think I had 2 kids and I was just started working like furiously. It wasn't just pecking away. I was waking up early to write. I was writing during like breastfeeding. I was writing, speaking into my like voice message thing, just like trying to catch the scenes as they came to me, and staying up late. And yeah, I've somehow finished it, sent it to an agent after getting a couple reads. And yeah, I was not shocked, but pretty surprised that I found representation, because I really didn't know what I was doing. And she then workshopped it with me for like a year and a half. So I had a lot of cleaning up to do, even after I finished it. And then another almost a year and a half of edits after that. So a lot of time and effort went into what you have and what you have read, and a lot of love and so much fun. I had so much fun writing it.
Well, so much of, well, not all of the book, but some of it does talk about that relationship with an infant. And it, you kind of lose that memory after a while when your kids get older. And so as soon as I started reading about feeding and that care and that warmth, it brought me right back. And I sort of had the same moment as Kit, but I have a 15 and 17-year-old. So it's been a lot in between that. And it was really cool. And you were experiencing it. So I think that
it was very fresh. It was very fresh for me. And sometimes I look back and I thought, oh, I could get into it even, I could have gotten into it even more, but Kit, it wasn't Kit's way to dwell on kind of those sensations. So I had to sneak it in there. But yeah, I really loved being pregnant. I love having children, and it's also hard and complicated. And I never feel like I'm doing as good a job as I want to. So I wanted to put a little bit of that in there. Yeah, I know. I think that's what, makes, I think it's built in, I think it's a drive. And even poor Kit, was not a super successful mom, but that seed of goodness was there. And yeah, I don't know. I identified with it. Just kind of.
Well, it was, I loved it. Talk about Texas. I mean, obviously you're a native Texan, but why, you could have picked any background, right? So, our first chapter, we have Texas brisket. Thank you. I was hungry immediately, and we had it for Memorial Day weekend. And then Armadillo Bend. You have all these just, I mean, it's just all throughout. So why Texas?
Well, why not? I love Texas, and I think it's probably a common impulse of a first-time novelist to write the home landscape because it's the one that we know the best. Texas is the place, I dream about it. I don't live there. I haven't lived there since 2003. But my whole family's there, and they've been there for like a lot of generations. And so it's a part of me, even though I sometimes feel a little bit like an outsider when I go back, because my accent's not as thick as it used to be. And I've gotten a little more liberal since I've lived in California, but I love it. And I really wanted to write a rural story. I grew up in Houston, but my dad lives on a ranch. He's lived out in the country most of his life. And so my parents divorced when I was little, and I would go out there on the weekends and for a month every summer. And it was a wonderful place to get to be around. And I'm grateful I grew up in the city, but I just have such a fondness for the ranch where my dad lives. And I also don't see that part of the country written about. I don't see that part of the state written about as much. When people write about Texas, it's often, West Texas, oil fields, some South Texas border stories, sometimes Dallas, but you don't get a lot of stories in Houston and around Houston. And I just think it's rich. It's the Brazos River has made it incredibly fertile. It's very lush. It's a subtropical region, and there's just so many characters and personalities that I love and I wanted to write about.
Well, I'll tell the group that y'all know I'm Texan, but I'm a Southeast Texan. So I was so familiar with what you're writing about. I went to school at Rice in Houston,
Oh,
and
wow.
all those regions in between, like I could just see them. I could see, the fence lines and the horses and the windmills and the tall grass. I mean, it was right on the money. So you did it right. And
That's
I
the
was proud
endorsement
to.
I'm looking for.
Well, I have read I read Valentine, which was a West Texas story. And I've read, like you said, The Border, but I don't know that I've ever read, although I did read The Liars Club, which was a memoir, which was fantastic. But it wasn't so much region, but about her.
Hers is like Piney Woods. It's just a little, north of Houston. And I loved that for the specificity of place. The only one that I can think about that writes about this area is Larry McMurtry, sometimes writes about Houston. And Horton Foote, the playwright, is from Harrison, or I think he's from Harrison, Texas, which is just a tiny town. It's probably gone. I think it's near Missouri City. And so he writes about Trip to Bountiful takes place between Houston and a little rural town, kind of in the near like Round Top, sort of where it starts to get hilly. I just wanted to shower the place in specific detail. If you live there, I want it to all come rushing back to you. If you've never been there before, I want it to be vivid and alive and want to make you want to go there.
Well, before we get much further into this, because we've now talked about the scene, give us a blurb of what you want people to know about this story. How do you describe it?
Oh God, I'm so bad as Laura Beth.
Sorry.
Whenever people ask me to say that, just word salad comes out. So let me center myself and think about that. It is people ask me if it's a Southern book, and it happens in the Southern kind of half of the United States, but I think it's a Texan book. It's a little bit different than a deep Southern story. Although there are many themes within it. It's not quite Gothic. I call it a gritty Texas Gothic, what do I call it? Literary thriller. And it's not strict genre thriller, because it's a super slow burn all the way till like 3/4 of the way in. And then the last fourth, it just picks up and it kind of smacks you across the face and makes you wake up. It's a story about motherhood. It is a story about identity and finding home. And it's also a story about how much we need love and how powerful the search for love is, and how we will take it where we can get it when we're deprived enough. Those are the kind of like themes that are important to me that I wanted to communicate. But plot-wise, it's about a little girl who was abandoned by her mother and who escapes from her foster home in search of a long-lost relative. And before she can get there, she gets picked up by a very charismatic, very bad dude. And her need for love kind of inspires her to stay with him by choice. And so it's about their relationship, if you can call it that, their adventures together, if you can call it that. And it's about what happens when when he comes back into her life after a long separation. So I don't like to give away too many spoilers if anyone hasn't read it.
Well, you mentioned the foster system. Did you have to do a lot of research to kind of find out what Kit's experience would be like, or is that something you already, being a therapist, already kind of knew about?
I did not do much research. I think uh, certainly my work has informed that. I have worked with people from the foster system, people who just lived in very neglectful homes, even though were with their own parents. Um, and I don't know. I have a very vivid imagination, and I think I've probably absorbed enough information around me, from movies and talking to people who've been through things like that, that I was able to sort of fill in the blanks. But no, I didn't. It came from whatever I already had in my archives. And
So part,
go
go
right
ahead.
ahead. I was
I
just
was
going to
just
say,
going to go for it.
I'll go for it. I was just going to say that I did speak to a couple of people who did grow up in foster care, and they were just like, "You got it, girl." Like that was very close to my experience. So I don't know how I did that, but yeah, it's tough. I think it's a big piece of it is just like curiosity and imagination and empathy.
Now, part of Kit's personality, part of her physical being is that she doesn't feel physical pain. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that was important in this novel?
Yeah, that came a little bit later in the writing, not late, but once I had begun the novel as the project as a novel. Um, it's actually something I learned about in some of my studies as in psychology. First in an intro class about this phenomenon called, I think it's called like glove anesthesia. And it's where a traumatized part of your body, or in response to trauma, you can disconnect from any sensation. You can experience numbness. For example, the case study was this woman had no sensation in her hand whatsoever. And as Freud worked with her in psychoanalysis, he uncovered a trauma an extreme trauma that involved her hand. And once she was able to resolve the trauma, her sensation returned to her hand. And so this expression of extreme trauma in a physical numbness just broke my heart. And I thought it was a really compelling device to use for this character who, without, I try not to go into too much detail about what she's been through. But you can imagine if her nervous system has cut her off from physical sensation like that, it must have been pretty bad. And so my curiosity is like, how does she come back, not just to physical sensation, but how does she come back to an opening of the heart, a sense of safety, a sense of home? And it's a winding road for her. It takes a lot of time.
Now, you began the novel in present day of the story, and then you flash back for the middle portion as to how we got there, and then come back to present day again at the end. And by present day, I mean 1990. So what made you make those decisions as far as how the book would flow and what you wanted the reader to get?
Well, the book started out linearly. So the first scene was her kicking down the road as a little girl, having just escaped foster home, looking for food and looking for lost family. That was the first scene initially. And then it just worked in chronological order. The decision to start in the present and then do the middle section in backstory actually came from a good friend of mine, Julia Langbein, who read it, and she was like, I don't know, why don't you try like messing around with the chronology? It might be kind of cool to start with the moment Manny comes back, when he gets out of prison and comes back to find her. And then she has some kind of reaction that she has, and then go back in time to explain, like, well, why does she have this reaction? And I thought that was great. But I wasn't sure if it was going to work. So I just did a big cut and paste, and then I lopped off the middle section and threw it at the beginning, and that cut and paste just stayed. It just worked. It was a really incisive note. And yeah, I really didn't mess too much with the chronology after that.
Well, I liked it because we now know Charlie exists, right? And that there's going to be this encounter later on. So the whole time you're building up, how is that going to happen? What are they going to, it's almost like the carrot that you're dangling in front of us to keep us moving along with your plot. It was a nice move, I thought.
I wish it were a little bit more ingenious of me, but it was, I was just following direction.
Well, it's great to have literary friends to help you along the way.
It sure is. Amen to that.
What was the hardest part of writing this novel, and what was the best part?
The hardest part was figuring out, there are two things. One was figuring out how all the different threads would sew together. Like I knew how I wanted it to end, and I knew how I wanted to set it up, but stitching that middle, connective tissue was just so hard. And it took a lot of effort to make it feel, earned and intuitive and just inevitable. Like, it was really hard. It took a lot of slamming my head against the wall. So that was
your patience made it authentic. So we appreciate that.
Oh my gosh. And then the second thing was just keeping track of all the facts that I had established in this imaginary world of mine. So I can't keep track of my kids' socks. I forget something every single day when I'm dropping them off at school. I do not have one of those brains that can just hold a million things at the same time. It's just not my skill set. I'm very much a focused person. So I was really good at focusing in on the chapter I was writing, but then I would continue to just, in one chapter, like so-and-so's hair would be red, and the next chapter it would be blonde. And there's just a million details like that you have to keep track of and keep consistent. And they have real implications if they're not the same throughout. Or, if you make her blonde, the people are going to react to her in one way versus if she's, got short red hair in the next one. It matters. It really matters. So that was really, really hard for me. And I can't say that I figured out a system for keeping track of it that I can apply to the second novel. Like I expect it to be just as hard this time.
Well, we definitely know it matters because the difference in brown eyes and blue eyes, right? The difference in treatment in the community was a big difference. But in my mind, I pictured you with a map of Texas because you're traveling on these roads and you have to know where they are, how far it is to get there, how long will it take them. I mean, just the logistics of the Texas Open Highway in of itself would be a challenge.
I probably should have used a map. What I did was I just came up with locations based on my travels that I knew I wanted Galveston in there because I grew up going to Galveston. And there were a couple other places I put in that I wanted to do, but no, I kind of did it backwards. And so then I would have to go back and be like, okay, they're in Round Top. All right, that's going to take 90 minutes from here to there. Well, it was the 70s. So they probably weren't obeying speed limits, stuff like that. So I think I might have made it harder than it had to be. But next time I am going to use a map. I think that's a good idea.
We talk about your use of metaphors because they're gorgeous. I was taking notes like a college kid ready for a paper.
My God.
Loved it. So, the trusting baby coyotes, and then, Kit is right. I mean, you can just see it. She is that trusting baby coyote right there. And then you have this wild coyote that you refer to, and it's Manny. And then the one I loved the most was when she was up against the tree and you had the
The
oh, I
locust.
can't, the cicada, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it a
Uh-huh.
cicada?
Cicada. Yeah.
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 And it's she's so frail and fragile, but it hung like to the tree. She wasn't moving. And I thought, that's Kit. Like now you've got, you may see him. I was just the whole thing. I wrote down all kinds
Oh
throughout
my gosh.
it was
Oh, you know what?
fantastic.
You could probably tell me a thing or two about my book. I'll tell you why I say that, because there's a few crafty things that I did that were conscious and deliberate. And there was a lot in there that was purely unconscious. I am a very instinctive writer, and I try not to effort too much. I try not to be too clever. Um, that's why I think plotting is hard for me, because I don't want to be in the conscious, like hammering out of it. I want to be in the, like, this is the scene, this is the character that's moving me. This is what, my heart is telling me to write. And so that locust, I did not do that. I mean, the cicada, I did not do that on purpose. That just came. I was like, I was in the sensory world. I was, I wanted her to focus on something. I imagined like what would be on the trunk
bark.
of a tree. And it's like,
Yeah.
Ants didn't feel right. Like a lizard didn't feel right. A frog, no, that's too dry for a frog. A locust, that's what I see on the, those little. And so, but
Yeah,
I think the meaning that you're getting from it is there. I truly
yeah.
believe that. I think that's my unconscious popping that in there.
Right. I didn't feel like it was forced. I didn't feel like it was a cliche. She was a shell of a person at that point, but she was hanging on with everything she had, and it was going to last.
Yep.
And it gave her that focus
Ooh.
away, which was beautiful. It was just great. So hey, even your subconscious is doing great work.
I got to cop to it. I can't take credit.
What is your process then? Why did you pick a screenplay? Because and I've never heard anybody say, like, I wrote a 90-page screenplay. And when I looked at it, because I did find this on the web, it says man. Is that how you got Manny? It says man, and then it would give the text.
Wait,
for the
man?
Screenplay. There was this, it
really?
said man, like when it was, yeah, like man, and then it had text, and then it said like girl or something.
Oh no, I don't even know what that is. I gotta. Oh yeah. No, I know what you're talking about. Yes. No, you know what? Again, unconscious. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. Because I came up with Manuel. I had a friend in high school named Manuel, and we call him Manny. So it just came to me. But I think it's absolutely a symbol of, like, masculinity gone totally haywire, in part. But no. Well, so your question about the screenplay. Well, I live in Los Angeles, and I have friends in the entertainment industry. My boyfriend at the time is a director, and now he's my husband. He's director still. So it's just kind of in the air. Like, I had a lot of friends working on screenplays, but it wasn't something that I had ever done. It was new to me, and I have yet to write a screenplay since. So it's definitely not like my first instinct. But I think why I chose it in that moment was, one, I was watching a lot of 80s and 90s, like psychosexual thrillers, like Fatal Attraction, Sleeping with the Enemy, Hand That Rocks a Cradle. A little bit later on, I did the like No Country for Old Men. That's a little bit more recent, but just really intense movies. And that was just like the headspace I was in, just bad dudes, like just shockingly bad dudes, and fierce, complicated women, and fighting for their lives. So that was just the headspace I was in. And so I just wanted to write something that I could, like, dash off. But really, like, I hadn't done even fiction before. I had only written nonfiction before that.
Well, I normally ask this at the end, but it seems to segue right in. Do you want this to turn into something A series, a movie, like
Yeah.
what's, I mean, you have
Oh
a
yeah.
director husband, like what's the skinny?
Yeah, well, he's comedy. All he does is comedy. So he has already, washed his hands of it, and I wouldn't want him to direct it either. He tried to make it he tried to do bits and jokes and stuff. But yeah, it's a total dream. It would be a dream come true. I would love for it to be reimagined on the screen. I would love to write the screenplay for it if I'm capable. And yeah, like I think about it all the time. I love it. I really hope it happens. I have been in a couple of meetings, which I've lived in LA long enough to know, like, a meeting means nothing. You do not, like, you can have a show already shot and produced and everything's like done, and it can still not get on the air. So, I don't get my hopes up, but if it happened, it would be really cool.
How do you picture it? As a series, a mini series, a TV? I mean a movie?
Well, I would love it as a movie, but also I think limited series, like high caliber limited series, like Mayor of Easttown was great.
Love that show.
It's so good.
So good.
I think that would be great for it too, because then I would get more time to flesh out the story instead of, squeezing it into 90 minutes. But yeah, but I mean, whatever. Like,
do you have people in mind that when you wrote it, or now that you've thought about it, what actors? Because I have one, but I want to hear yours first.
Oh, I can't wait to hear. I would love to see more in the chat too.
Y'all have suggestions, throw them in.
Ryan Bingham, who said that? Carrie?
Carrie did. Who's
Carrie,
Ryan
did
Bingham?
you? Oh, he's so cute. He's on Yellowstone. He's the
okay.
the guitarist. Walker, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's who I was going to suggest. I didn't
really?
know his name.
Oh, that's so funny. Carrie, how did Carrie know?
Oh, I don't know. Someone wrote me on Instagram, and they're like, I can't get Walker out of my head for this part. And as soon as she said it, I pictured him now.
You were Carrie. Like, oh, so listen, Carrie
up there.
I shouldn't say this. I'm going to jinx myself. This is such a lame move, but I'm going to say it anyway. You guys, I know you guys will appreciate this. So I randomly know someone who knows his manager, and I think they gave my book to him. So Ryan Bingham might have Shadows of Pecan Hollow. Like, he may have touched the book. That's all I can say. I'm sure he will never read it. But the cover may have like made contact with his fingertips, maybe.
To picture that too. You have to throw a guitar into the screenplay somehow. That's
well, listen to this. Okay, so I'm playing the long game because the next book that I'm writing is set in 1977 in the country music scene of Nashville, and there are many guitarists in it, and there's a couple of parts I think he would be great at. So if it didn't work for Shadows, maybe it'll work for the next one.
That's hilarious. I didn't know the actor's name. I just know him as Walker. Like, I don't.
Yeah, he's so cute.
But yeah,
he's so. But it's more than cute. He's like very soulful and seems really sensitive and very just like no BS. Just seems really genuine. And yeah, I've heard that's how he is as a person. But did I have anyone in mind? No, Kit, I just really think needs to be like an unknown. Like, I would love someone who has no associations with other movies to play her. I think that would be so rad. If there were a famous actress, I can imagine like America Ferrera or Gina Rodriguez or God, there was another one I forgot. For Manny, maybe Oscar Isaac. I think he's got the presence. He's also Cuban. Part Cuban, but no, there's no one that's really like nailed it. Like, who's the guy from Magic Mike, the like really big thick guy, the biggest one?
Oh, he was in the are you talking about the one that was on the vampire show too? The one
Oh, I
that's
don't
married
know.
to Sofia Vergara.
Yeah. So like him, if you were like skinnier, if you weren't quite so built, like I don't see
Buff.
Manny as like buff. He's more like
Mm-mm.
wiry, like I don't know.
Mhm.
But no, I haven't like nailed down casting. That said, Sissy Spacek for Eleanor would be a dream come true. Um, Renee Zellweger, who's from Katy, which is right where this is set, basically, just like a few miles east of where this is set. I think Renee Zellweger for Red would be awesome. Um, that's all I got. What about you guys?
Okay. Anybody have any other suggestions, Carrie? That was so good. And Charlie, I think, might be an unknown as well, too. I don't think she has to be.
Yeah, she could be unknown. I mean,
What and Doc? What about Doc? Because that's going to be a
Kathy
really
Bates,
colorful
maybe.
11.
Kathy Bates could do that.
You know,
She's
I pictured her as an African American woman.
she actually is. She's Creole, so
Yeah,
she's white. She could be white passing,
yeah,
but she's Creole. Uh, so yeah, that would be, it would really have to be the right fit. But I imagine Kathy Bates is like spirit with that,
yeah. I could
just
see that.
no BS, lively, strong personality.
Well, she was really a savior in a lot of ways. And let's to refocus. One of your themes was home, and there's this journey for her to find a Kit to find a home, and she finds it in Eleanor. But then we know from the beginning of the book that when Eleanor is no longer there for her, Doc really picks up those pieces, and we don't get so much of it later in the novel. But
Mhm,
remembering back, she saved her in a lot of ways.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, there were a lot more chapters, and I want to say there was even POV, like point of that I had chapters that were from Doc's point of view. So there was a lot more Doc in earlier drafts that got sort of whittled away. Same with Caleb. There was a whole like Caleb backstory. He's a lot less central in this version. But yeah, she was amazing. She actually started out as a man. I had her as sort of like a paternal figure, and I just kept thinking like, oh, this just feels a little cliche, and I was looking for ways to make it feel more specific, and I was like, what if I make her a woman? She's a pillar of this community. She's got somewhat of a masculine presence, um, but but I think it's more interesting that she's a woman doing all these things in this kind of, I don't want to say close. It's a little close-minded town.
Oh, it definitely is. I mean,
Yeah.
you have people constantly saying, that there needs to be a father figure, that she's not a good
Mhm.
parent because there's no father to discipline.
Mhm.
Just the religious aspect can be very narrow in the smaller towns.
Yeah.
If there's not a person
Yeah.
opening eyes. But
Yeah. Yeah.
was to change just a little bit, because you mentioned talking with a workshop for about a year and a half, and then this long process. Was there anything that got taken out, kind of what you're talking about with the Doc chapters, that you fought really hard for to stay, or is there anything that you kind of missed that you wish you'd have had more space for?
Yeah, I wish I had more space for Caleb. I really love him. And I hope he came through as like lovable and fully realized in this. I'm actually not sure. But I actually have a short story that I've been trying to send out to literary magazines that's basically his backstory, from when he was a kid. And I love it
Mhm.
so much. But I haven't been able to print it. So I got to figure out what I want to. I haven't been able to get it, in print anywhere. So I have to figure out what I'm going to do with it. But yeah, Caleb, and there was another ending.
Okay.
I can't decide if I want to. I mean, I'd be happy to talk about it, but you guys should tell me if you want to hear about it. Because for some
Okay.
people, it's like,
Hands. Can I Raise hands if you want to hear the alternate ending. One,
You
two,
can-
three, four. Carrie went, I think she's paused. So everybody that I can see said yes.
Okay. If you don't want it for
yeah.
some reason, just mute the volume. Sorry, guys. So originally the ending was two things that were different, two big things that were different. One was Kit marries Caleb. She gets married at the end, the very end. And the second one was she meets her mother. Instead of turning around and going home, she goes in and she meets her mother. And it's a really difficult but beautiful scene that I'm really proud of, that I wished I could have gotten in, but my editor was right. It did not it just wasn't quite earned. Like, to introduce this character at the end, to have Kit go through that experience, because what happened with the mother originally was she was clearly a very self-centered, kind of narcissistic person, and Kit was disappointed. But then Kit kind of like advocates for herself and pushes and presses her mother to say, like, I feel like I should just send it to you guys. But she basically, really,
I can read it.
if you guys send me your emails, I can send it.
I will. If y'all send it to me, I'll send it to her. So I will tell you, I had people, because we were waiting on you, we all unmuted and talked. And I had people saying that they had it from the library and they did not want to return it because they wanted the characters to stay with them longer. And I had other people, I mean, it's just like, there's so, everything about it, like you used the word earned. It's so earned because you put yourself right into it. And like, I have chill bumps right now because it really affects, I think it affected all of us. That's why we're all here tonight.
Oh my gosh, you guys, that means so, like nothing could make me happier. I mean, that is the best thing to hear. That's all I want to do, you know, like if I sell 100 books and it touches those 100 people, then like, that's it. That's all I need to sell. That's amazing. Thank you for saying that.
Well, we have people from all over. It's not just Texans here tonight. We have Kentucky. Ooh. We have somebody from Michigan.
Hey, Michigan.
We have, who else? I think Carrie, I mean, all over. Where are you from? Y'all can put it in the box. New York, from Carrie's in New York. So, you know, I think it, like you said, it's a Texas novel, but it's not only for Texans. Like it's such a character-driven book that really hits home because I think the emotion is so raw. And I want to get to that rawness because there are some very, very heavy topics that you talk about. And so, you know, how do you as a writer get in the mind space to write Manny? Because he's evil. I mean, he's sheer evil. And, you know, he's not much different coming out of, I mean, he just has a different way of thinking, but it's still as evil as before. So how do you do that?
Well, I think he was my weakest character. He was hardest. I don't know. He was hardest for me to write in because I related to him the least. I felt like it was hardest to get into his head, but in a way it was easier because I wasn't going through the emotions that I was going through with the other characters. So he's actually the one I feel most insecure about. But you know, I think I just sort of, I've worked with a couple of bad dudes and I've known a couple of bad dudes in my life. And it's hard for me to believe that people are just bad. I'm always interested in what made them that way and what kind of a environment hardens people or wounds people or twists people into this bad dude shape. And so I guess when I was writing those scenes, I just tried to like get into, well, what kind of situation, like how would this person make sense of the world? And that was the best that I could do. But I admit it was a challenge. That was harder.
What could you give him a diagnosis as a therapist, what you believe he would have?
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, he was sort of a simple, like malignant narcissist. Like you're, you know, just like that shitty boyfriend that you dumped in college. And, like there was with some like sociopathic tendencies, because he's antisocial tendencies because he's a criminal, so he's not, he really doesn't do empathy. He's got a little bit of it. He's able to relate to Kit. He's able to feel some sort of fatherly warmth toward her, and then a different kind of warmth. But when he goes to prison and has that experience, oh my God, you guys, I'm gonna have to go soon. Sorry.
Okay.
Ugh. Okay. When he has that intense experience in isolation, I think he goes a little psychotic. And so his sense of God as sort of like guiding his hand is what, that's sort of like the extra psychological sauce that gets laid on.
Okay.
It makes him go so wild.
Well, so we don't have time if they want to ask questions. I want to go ahead and do the
any questions that you guys have, I would be happy to answer via like DM on Instagram or whatever. Like I'm here for you. Open book.
Can you talk about, did you intentionally plan foreshadowing, or is that also a subconscious decision? Because I found a lot of that in here as well.
Some of it, yeah. Some of it I would go back and kind of weave it in. Once I'd sort of figured out where I was going, I'd be like, ooh, it'd be fun to get like a little shiver of something, 6 chapters earlier. Was there anything in particular you were thinking about?
Well, I think with the coyotes especially, you could see that coming a mile. I could just see how that was going to affect the rest of her life, right?
Yeah. The machete was deliberate. I knew I wanted to have her start off with a machete in her hand, and I knew. Has everyone read it?
Yes, everybody said they had, and I told people at the end it was going to be more detailed.
Okay. Yeah, and I knew that I wanted her to use that machete on him at the end. So yeah, that was very, very much that, and the brambles was very deliberate. But other stuff just kind of comes out, it's like the mood of the chapter. It's I work a lot in animal imagery, and so because it's set in this rural place, animals just kind of naturally populate, and they end up having really interesting implications later on, like you said with the cicada.
Well, there are a lot of triggers in this. Are you a proponent of trigger warnings for books? For instance, I had people that were not comfortable with the animal cruelty, and I understood where you were coming from it, because it created an atmosphere of character that we needed to learn about them, core values, to carry through. But some people just cannot read anything to do with animal cruelty. So what are your thoughts on that? Should they be included, or do you like just the surprise element? Or
gosh, I don't know. That's tough for me. The therapist in me is like, oh, I want, to support people's sense of like safety and, protecting their heart. And but I think if you're, as an author, I'm like, no, don't give away what's about to happen. I don't want you to talk about those like plot points. Get out of here. So, it's mixed. As a reader, I really don't want to see any trigger warnings. Like, I do not want to know what's about to happen, because then I'm just preparing myself for it the whole time. But I think it would be nice if it was something more like a rating system, like for movies, where if you're watching an R-rated movie, you're gonna get some heavy stuff, some adult stuff, some language, and so you're just kind of generally prepared for a variety of adult content. But I've seen some really specific trigger warnings for Pecan Hollow that just I think they give a little too much away personally, but I get it with the animal cruelty thing. I know that's a really, really big trigger. I think I having grown up sort of half in the country, I'm like, it's just a part of life, not that particular type of animal slaughter, but yeah, I think I'm a little like hardened to it.
I mean, I just think, yeah, depending on if you grew up in a rural versus an urban town, it's a different perspective. I know you need to close up, and I always ask authors this. I know I'm putting you on the spot. So what books and they don't have to be Pecan Hollow related, just what books are you reading that you would recommend, or that you've read in the past and you always recommend, or just surprise us?
Oh my gosh. I read a wild book called Why Aren't They Talking About This? I think by Patricia Lockwood. It is so unusual, and really, I mean, it hit me so hard. I wept at the end. So just like cheers to her for creating that emotional experience for me. And then I'm reading More Than You'll Ever Know by Katie Gutierrez. It just came out this month. It's very good, incredibly astute, deeply imagined characters, really interesting plot, and it takes place in Laredo and Austin and Mexico City. So really cool.
I'm interviewing her July 31st. So we're gonna do that author chat.
Awesome. She's awesome.
Coming out on Tuesday. It publishes this Tuesday. So
awesome. Yeah, she's so great.
Look out for that. And she does a lot of article writing too. I know you're wanting to submit it. I saw she wrote some pieces for Texas Monthly.
Yeah, she's
recently.
Texas Highways too. She's a pretty prolific journalist.
So those are really cool. Anything else you want to recommend?
I love McMurtry. I love Terms of Endearment. Some of the best female characters. I mean, he's just awesome. Love for
that was actually filmed right. That was filmed at Rice, the house right there at Rice University. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of great Houston locations. And who else? Brian Washington is a Houston author who's like very specific, like has Houston like mapped out in his books. He's really, really good.
Well, thank you so much. I hope everybody took notes. I wrote them down. I'll try to get
thank you. Questions. Now I'm so glad to know about this author series. I'm definitely going to chime in.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Caroline Frost, for coming, and all the readers out there who joined us. I know a lot of people last minute, holidays and summer, but they're asking for video, so we'll do that. If you'd like to join, check out the LBs. I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook. We have at least 2 to 3 chats per month, and I hope everybody can join us. Awesome. And like I said, next Sunday is Kai Harris with What the Fireflies Knew. And thanks, Mike, for doing the background, but appreciate everybody, and y'all have a fantastic night. I will talk to Caroline, and we're going to do the giveaway, and I'll be messaging. So
woohoo.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much, Laura Beth.